The Washington Commanders came away with another victory on Sunday in Week 11 of the NFL season, defeating the Houston Texans by a score of 23-10. How it happened, who made it happen. We give out game balls Victory Monday here on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast. It's Victory Monday, live episode of Locked On Commanders podcast, coming to you from NRG Stadium and from the DMV. David Harrison and Chris Russell, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and the WUSA 9 Plus app for your Roku or your Amazon Fire Stick. And we thank you, of course, for making us your first listen or view of the day. Again, I'm David Harrison. My partner is Chris the Rooster Russell. You can find him on the Team 980 Monday through Friday with Pete Medhurst, live from 9 a.m. to noon Eastern. You can find me covering your Commanders in writing for Sports Illustrated's FanNation at Commander Country. Both of us credentialed members of the media, even though, Chris, look, Team 980 just has to have you there Monday morning. So unfortunately, you couldn't be in H-Town with me, but it was a party nonetheless as the Washington Commanders come away with their sixth win of the season.
Absolutely. And before we get to a volley back on that, today's episode of Locked On Commanders is presented by Prize Picks. Daily Fantasy made easy. Pick between 2 and 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Before we get to our big takeaway and story, David, just a quick note. The last time the Commanders were in Houston, well, they weren't obviously the Commanders. It was game 1, week 1 of the Jay Gruden era, and they lost, and it wasn't particularly pretty, and Robert Griffin III struggled, as he almost always did. And this just in, it was like 98 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the bugs and the gnats were swarming around between the Astrodome, which is next door to you, and NRG Stadium, which is where you are right here and right now. And not to mention the last time these two teams played, that was the Alex Smith game that changed everything for him in his life and his career in November of 2018. But we start with our big takeaway and our big story, and that is, in a win like this, sure, the Washington Commanders gave up a big touchdown late, I guess, but the defense dominant again, only allowing that one touchdown with 3 minutes and change left to go. And they also scored a touchdown. Kendall Fuller on a pick-6 to get the scoring going. Also racked up 5 sacks, 2 total takeaways, including a Derek Forrest. Derek Forrest, I want to say his name right, interception off of a great play, and 148 net yards of offense. How do you like them apples there, Mr. Harrison?
You love those apples, especially because it leads to a Commanders win. Not the most exciting victory, right, of the season, not the most exciting game and thrilling game to watch, as a fan. But I think as a Commanders fan, everybody out there, I think you're happy with just coming away with the win. And like we said, 6-5 now on the season. And look, Chris, I think at the end of the day, we've kind of known about this team, and what we've kind of known is that they're a very resilient squad, right? Resiliency doesn't mean you're always going to get it right. It just means that even when you get it wrong, or every time you get it wrong, hopefully you still come away successful, but you're going to learn from your mistakes, and you're going to continue to plug ahead. And to a man, Ron Rivera, Taylor Heinicke, Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller, all kind of talked about, at the podiums after the game about they're happy to have the win, but you definitely want to continue to work towards cleaning up some of the things that they need to clean up. Much worse on third downs offensively this week than they were last week. And, if you go back to last week when Ron Rivera was asked about why they were able to be so successful on third downs as an offense, he mentioned that a lot of those third downs were 5 yards or shorter. I went back and counted 14 rather, of the third downs they had against the Philadelphia Eagles were 5 yards or shorter. They had 13 total third downs against the Houston Texans. Only 3 of them were 5 yards or shorter. So if you want to know the big difference in third down offense, that has a lot to do with it. But again, you still come away with the win. So ultimately, you're still happy that you have the chance to try to fix those things while enjoying Victory Monday.
Absolutely. And it'll be a weird week because of Thanksgiving. We're not even quite sure whether the team is going to practice on Thursday itself because they're going to actually have a walkthrough on Tuesday. That generally indicates that they're going to have Thursday off, and which they should, well earned, and obviously with the holiday and all that. So it's a little bit of a different week, even though it's a normal week in terms of days in between games. And this is a game they could have taken lightly. They did not. They talked about it all week, and then they executed as such, and then obviously got off to a good start. And that leads us into our plays of the day. Listen, the first score, the Kendall Fuller interception in zone against Brandon Cooks, was awesome. Very, 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 very important. Kendall Fuller is a different person the last 3 weeks than he was, quite honestly, all year. Maybe it's just getting rid of the pressure of William Jackson III. I don't know what it is. He generally tends to be a streaky player, but that was huge. But David, for me, on this inconsistent offense, the play of the day, I'm going to go with Curtis Samuel in the 10-yard touchdown run in that first half on a jet motion give. And the reason why I'm going with that is because they were able to mix the run and pass pretty well in that series. If I remember correctly, Antonio Gibson had a 9-yard run. I think Brian Robinson had an 8-yard run or somewhere close to that. Earlier in the drive, Curtis Samuel had another jet give on a very, very similar looking design setup, only from the opposite side, meaning from the left side of the offense running along the line of scrimmage to the right, whereas the touchdown came from a line to the right side and then coming down the line of scrimmage from right to left. So it was basically a very similar look, if not exactly similar, and yet it started from a different launch point, which causes maybe a little bit of confusion. So I thought it was a well-designed series, and obviously execution on the final punch, if you will, to the Texans to get the Commanders' only offensive touchdown of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely a critical play. And I mean, that put them up 14-0 after the extra point and all that stuff. So definitely a great momentum seizing moment as well. And talk about repeating some plays. Remember that slant combo kind of pick play deal that we saw against Tennessee Titans that ended up in an interception and a loss for the Commanders? Saw that play again today. And this time the right decision was made. It was not a touchdown. It was not honestly, it wasn't even a completed pass, but the decision made was the correct one. So that's always great. But my play of the game is going to be Derek Forrest's interception towards the end of the game. Look, it's 23-3 in favor of Washington. Everybody in the press box, everybody in the stadium, probably everybody at home is pretty much saying this game is over. And from a most often case scenario situation, it is over. But this is the National Football League, and we've seen miracle comebacks before. So defenses want to definitely close the door. And, look, they came away needing to work on some things from the second half. But in this moment, anyway, 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Texans were already in Commanders' territory, I think 48-yard line. They decided to take a shot. Davis Mills targeted Brandon Cooks. Benjamin St-Juste made a play, closed on the ball, closed on the receiver, tipped it into the air, and Derek Forrest was able to come in and take away the pass, getting the interception. A little bit of conversation. One guy, one official first said interception, then it was overturned, and then they had a discussion, is the way they said it. Not a review, had a discussion, ruled it an interception, which is what stood up. And really, Chris, what stood out on that play to me was the intelligence by the defenders, both Benjamin St-Juste, Derek Forrest, second-year players in this defense. After the game in the locker room, Benjamin St-Juste said he basically just wanted to get his body in position, knew that he had some size and some length against Brandon Cooks, but also wanted to make sure that he wasn't overly physical to draw a flag, and that he was able to make the play. Made the play, got the deflection, and then Derek Forrest, you go to that end of it, said that that's what they coach. They say, look, when there's a play happening like that, you see your guy, he's in position. You don't need to get in there and get involved in that part of it. Be ready for the deflection. Pursue the ball. That's exactly what Derek was doing. So everything you saw there didn't just happen. Luckily or fortunately, that was all by design. That's what's going through those players' heads as they're making that kind of a catch. And those two second-year players, again, game was most likely out of hand right already. But if it wasn't, they slammed the door shut with that interception.
Yeah, just one quick note on that. I think the difference for St-Juste this week is there was plenty of hand fighting, and he was pretty handsy and grabby. with Cooks down the field. Could have gotten maybe called for a DPI. The reason why he didn't this week, and he did last week in Philadelphia, or last Monday night in Philadelphia, is because, David, he had his head turned. He was looking for the football where he did not last Monday night. And they're going to give you the opportunity to fight for the ball and to have that ball. It's as much the defensive back as it is the wide receiver if your head is turned around and if you're looking for the football. So a heads up, like maybe a subtle little change, but a difference between last Monday night's DPI down the sideline and this play.
No, a huge example of the increased IQ of Benjamin St-Juste in his second year. So looking for the ball. Look, holiday season's coming up, so we're all looking to get great gifts for our friends, our families, our loved ones. This episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast brought to you by Total Wine and More. The holiday season, you can find what you love at Total Wine and More. So many great bottles to choose from. It's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay. If you're into that kind of thing, single barrel whiskey is my kind of thing. You can get the perfect gift for everyone on your list with some help from friendly guides over at Total Wine and More, and all with the confidence of knowing you found something special for the lowest price. Love what you find what you love, only at Total Wine and More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Chris, I know for a fact in Houston, they're on DoorDash, so you can get whatever you need, any way you need it. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Drink responsibly, must be 21. This episode is also brought to you by Turo, the largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a local community of hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for anywhere, any budget across the U.S., U.K., Canada, and they're coming soon to Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or minivan for that road trip, or get a classic luxury car for date night. Whatever you want, whatever you need, these Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. I've used it. They delivered the car to me in Indianapolis. It was amazing. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com.
All right, we welcome you back to the Locked On Commanders podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen and your first view of the day. Also, be able to make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today with Peter Bukowski and friends. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I just want to apologize. I made David Harrison work a little overtime. Poor guy had to pick up my slack, and I feel bad. I'm sorry. I was
all good.
I was you know what I was doing. I was locked in on the magic of your live read there that you were doing, that I forgot that I was supposed to do one myself. Shout out to Patrick West, who's listening and watching, and also one of my guys, Chris Coxon, who wisely notes that ground sausage is better than ground beef. Also wants to know why Antonio Gibson stopped short of the goal line and didn't score. Cost him.
Because he's smart.
Others.
That's why. Fantasy owners don't like it, but the team certainly. Hey, Chris, real quick, while we're giving shout outs, I actually want to give a shout out. So everybody knows it's Salute to Service month, right, for the NFL. They're doing Salute to Service games. It's been a lot of fun. Minnesota Vikings visiting FedEx was Washington Salute to Service game. And then we had to go to Philly. That was their Salute to Service game. And then actually this week was Houston's Salute to Service game. So a lot of great things going on out there. But look, New Era caps. You guys might have seen some hats in the backdrop of my set back home. They send me hats every once in a while. They just like me to put them in my backdrop when I can. And you know what? New Era is legitimately my favorite hat company. So I'm more than happy to do it. Don't get paid to do it. And other than maybe free hats, which I'm not allowed to wear because unbiased media, right? But they sent me that one. So salute to Service one's kind of special because they know that I'm a veteran, and they also sent me a really cool handwritten note as well. I think that was a very nice touch. It's one thing to send merch, when you're trying to get somebody to put it in their backdrop so that all the fans get to see it, but it's another to take time to actually write with your own hand. I mean, that's a lost art these days. So huge shout out to New Era, and of course the Salute to Service stuff. I know a lot of veterans in my walk of life, and everybody always appreciates being appreciated. So absolutely. Shout out to them as well.
No doubt about it. All right, let's start with our stock up, stock down. After a second consecutive win, second win in 5.5 days. The Commanders are now 6-5, and they are over 500 for the first time since the end of week number 1. For me, stock up. The numbers are not going to match the eye test here, David. I'm just going to tell the number nerds can go kick all the rocks. I don't care about you because I know football and I know what I'm looking at. And for the second week in a row, I thought Brian Robinson Jr. ran super hard. He may not have been the most effective. Again, I don't care about your fantasy teams. I don't care about your props and all that stuff. I do care about your Prize Picks projection. So I'm sorry there. That's just because they're a proud supporter of the Locked On Commanders podcast. But anyway, I don't care about any of that stuff. I care about how hard he ran and some of the runs that I saw. And I'll give you a perfect example. I think the score was 20-3 at the time, may have been 23-3. I can't remember. I think it was 20-3. They started a drive at the 3-yard line, and he ran one for 11 yards. He took a little, not a jump cut, but a cut into the right guard, center hole, lowered his shoulder, kept driving, forward lean, body down, kept driving with authority. That was just one run, but it got the Commanders deep out of their own territory, like inside their own 5 at the 3, which could have been disaster. You never know what's going to happen in that spot. Gave them more than enough wiggle room to at least operate. Had a late run for 6 yards, again, shoulder down, just accelerating into the hole. Again, it was only 6 yards. I don't need Brian Robinson to rip off 40 yards a carry. I need him to give me 4+, 4.5, 5, whatever it is, 6 yards, good enough for me. Plus had a 4th down conversion in which he bounced to the outside after it was initially bottled up on basically a zone left run. So those 3 runs specifically, but there were more that jumped out to me. Again, don't care what his final statistics were. I know they weren't overly impressive, but to me, stock up for a second week in a row, Brian Robinson Jr.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, there's a method to the madness, and Brian Robinson is serving his role very, very well. My stock up is actually going to go to the entire secondary. So I have a question for all the fantasy people out there. Did you start the Washington Commanders fantasy defense in your fantasy league? Because if you didn't, you missed out on 34 points, at least the way that my league does the scoring. I know every league is a little bit different, but bottom line is you missed out on a lot of points in this game. 5 yards total offense in the first half. And it's interesting because the top 2 leading tacklers on this team, Chris, DBs. Typically, that's not a good thing. Typically, that means that you probably gave up about 150 rushing yards, which is what the Houston Texans did, not the Washington Commanders. But what it means is that your front 7 is getting early penetration and your DBs are rallying to the ball. So great play from there. Then again, I started Derek Forrest in my fantasy league as an individual defensive player, so I'm really happy that he got that interception after discussion on the field. But yeah, stock up to the entire secondary, especially without Cole Holcomb. You've mentioned this before too, and I know a lot of people talked about it. They're not really playing more linebackers as much as they're playing more DBs. So the secondary stepping up even with team captain Cole Holcomb off the field.
Yeah, speaking of Cole Holcomb, the guy that's mostly replacing because David Mayo's also been banged up is John Bostic. I was thinking about going with John Bostic for my stock down.
He's done very well as well. Oh, dog stock down.
I was thinking about it because he got burned on the crossing route by Brandon Cook for like 30 yards or whatever it was. But I thought, you know what? I mean, listen, that's unfair, right?
He's a 3rd string linebacker.
Exactly. So I'm probably going to frustrate the rest of the Commanders fan base, or at least the Heinicke hive. And for my stock down, David, I feel bad for saying this. Not trying to be a jerk, which is one of my catchphrases. I know this won't be popular, but the Commanders just simply need more out of Taylor Heinicke. This is the 2nd straight game, granted, 2nd straight win on the road, that he did not throw for a touchdown pass. His last touchdown pass came with more than 14 minutes remaining in the 4th quarter against the Minnesota Vikings 2 weeks ago today, or Sunday, depending on when you're watching this. That, again, look, touchdown passes are not everything by any means. I understand they won, and a win is a win is a win is a win. You got to give me more. You're just not going to be able to keep this up. It's not sustainable. So, again, stock down the new starter for the Washington Commanders. And we're going to have a full discussion about this on the next episode. All the reporters were running around, that have access. Ian Rappaport started it, and Fox was just they could not contain themselves on the TV. The new starter, the long-term starter, the permanent starter. Listen, guys, He's the starter until they lose, and then it's a decision. It was never a decision. But if he continues to play as up and down, as inconsistently as today, they're going to lose sooner than later. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they need to be better. He missed some big throws, one in the end zone to Logan Thomas. That would have been a touchdown on a third down. He missed John Bates on a third down. You mentioned those third down situations. You're absolutely right, but he missed some throws that would have extended drives and given them first down. He took a quarterback keeper and rolled to the right inside the 10-yard line and got blown up for a 2-yard loss. He then rolled to the right because he was scrambled under pressure and got absolutely popped. And yes, it was incomplete, and no, there was nothing there, and that's fine. But you got to protect yourself if you're Taylor Heinicke. You can't get popped. So not to mention there was the interception on the first series of the game that Jalen Petrie dropped. I mean, that should have been an easy interception, and maybe one more, David. I hate to be a part of pooper, but they need more out of Taylor Heinicke. Stock down, starting quarterback, number 1.
Yep. And, look, Taylor acknowledged some flaws on his own as well. So he knows that he's got some stuff to work on. Final stock down for today's episode, and really not anything that Jahan is doing, but it is Jahan Dotson. Look, 2 games with Taylor Heinicke since he's been back, 3 targets, 2 catches, 27 yards, no touchdowns. First 2 games with Carson Wentz, 10 targets, 7 catches, 99 yards, 3 touchdowns. There's a very stark difference. It's chemistry. It's going to take a little bit of time, but obviously from a fantasy perspective, obviously that stock is down. But you know what, Chris? If you're playing prediction strike, you might want to go ahead and pick him up low because that stock is eventually going to start rising again.
Absolutely. And if you're picking Prize Picks, you might have to wait until next Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons, but you can get your bet in early on that, or your pick, I should say, early on Taylor Heinicke and anything Washington Commanders. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to play Prize Picks and prizepicks.com for the Monday night game, right? San Francisco and Arizona. Here's what I would suggest. Take Jimmy G. He's so handsome, right? For San Francisco Monday night against Arizona for more than 1.5 touchdown passes, which is his Prize Picks projection. Take that and say, combine it with Christian McCaffrey at more than 35.5 receiving yards, and boom, you're in like Flynn. Here's what you got to do. You pick between 2 and 5 players. That's it. Pick between 2 and 5 players. And if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you're going to win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's you versus the projections available. Prize Picks has you covered for all the NFL action, NBA, NHL, college football, whatever you want. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They are currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit 100, they'll give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
All right, guys, wrapping up this Victory Monday episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast, and we're going to do it by handing out some game balls. And this one, a little bit, I don't want to say difficult, but we got a little creative with it, Chris. So, again, for those of you unfamiliar, 3 game balls going out. We're kind of doing it hockey style, so if you're a Caps fan, you'll be familiar. 3rd game ball, 2nd game ball, 1st game ball. So 3, 2, 1 is the way that NHL does their stars. Number 1 is the number 1, but we're going to start with number 3, Chris. Who is getting our 3rd game ball of the night?
Absolutely. As a tag team, we decided to go with Antonio Gibson, 18 carries, 72 yards, 3 catches, 3 targets, 31 yards. A smart play, despite what some are saying, that it cost their fantasy league. Listen, a smart play by sliding down and score instead of scoring. Sure, what would have hurt? Score that. You want to kill clock. You want to get this game over with. You don't want to extend it for potential injuries. Never mind the win or loss, David. You do not want to run any more plays just to avoid potential injury because you never know what can happen. Antonio Gibson was really good. And I kind of knew we were going to go there. So that's why I kind of went with Brian Robinson on my stock report up earlier in the show.
Yeah, the running backs definitely holding their own. And then, so we decided game ball number 2. This is where we're going to get a little bit creative on it. 2 guys are going to split it. And you know what? I think they're going to be okay with that because they share sacks from time to time. So they can share this game ball. John Allen and Montez Sweat. Allen had 2 sacks or 2 holding penalties against Kenyon Green, which I do believe the Rooster, that was your bold prediction to end the week, was that Kenyon Green was going to get victimized by this defensive line, and victimized he did. My bold prediction did not come true. Antonio Gibson got me 100 scrimmage yards from offense. Brian Robinson did not, which I'm sure.
But you know what? I'm not going to let you take the blame for that. You were pretty damn close on that one. That was good, and I was a little worried the first couple of series on offense, but they just eventually wore them down. Listen, bold predictions, right? They're not supposed to be easy to obtain.
Exactly. Yeah, they're supposed to be bold for a reason, so they don't always come true. In fact, most of the time they don't come true. It's like if every third down was 3rd and 10, you're not going to be as successful. But when you do, you nail them and you hit them out of the park, just like you did with your Kenyon Green. I'm sure he appreciates you nailing your bold prediction. Montez Sweat also had 2 sacks. And look, we talked about the teamwork on the turnover from the young guys, right? But John Allen talked at the podium after the game about how Montez, like his first sack specifically, John made a move, got early penetration. They collapsed in on John to keep him from getting in. Montez took advantage of that opportunity and got the sack. He plays off of Daron. Daron plays off of them. That's how they do these things. And I've already seen some people on Twitter saying, imagine what this defensive line can do when Chase Young gets back on the field. Hopefully we see that sooner rather than later. But for now, Chris, I mean, these guys are humming. And so Daron deserves enough credit as well. But I think especially for the game ball, Montez, John Allen, 2 sacks apiece, plus a whole lot of other havoc wreaked on the Texans offensive line. They get the game ball number 2.
Absolutely. And Montez, both of his sacks were like kind of tackle and stunts and loops. And he had to take let's just call it a circuitous path to the quarterback and got home every time. So good to see there. And you mentioned Daron Payne, a pass knockdown and a sack as well. And F.A. Obata also deserves a little something as well. Casey Toohill with a big run blow up earlier. So really these guys all are contributing. And again, Chase Young maybe, right?
You know what? Just carve that game ball up like a Thanksgiving turkey and give everybody a little bit of it.
A little turducken, maybe.
By the way, the tight ends are getting J's from Taylor Heinicke this week. So the offensive line got J's last week. Tight ends are getting them this week. I mean, running backs and wide receivers, I don't know. We'll see when they get theirs, but some J's going around from old Taylor, the starting quarterback.
I thought the whole deal was that he was going to get the sneakers in the color of the opponent that he beat. When I missed this?
He is. He still gets the J's in the color of the team that he beat. But last week he also gifted the O-line each a pair of J's in the color of the team that they beat. And this week he's going to do the same thing. But this week he's giving them to the tight ends. Now, look, there's only 2 or 3 tight ends, 5 offensive linemen, and I don't know if you're counting rotate. So I don't know. Maybe Taylor's just trying to save some money, but he says it's because he appreciates what the tight ends did, especially in the running game.
Hey, again, not to Barry Horowitz myself, but I will. Again, Logan Thomas was my player to watch, and while he didn't do anything super special, again, Heinicke could have had that touchdown pass to him in the corner of the end zone, and he had a nice day for himself. And John Bates just absolutely mauled a dude about 10 yards back on one block that I saw, and obviously some physical blocking out there as well. All right, let's wrap it up with the final star, the first star, and the game ball number 1, numero uno, and that is Kendall Fuller. And listen, David, I mean, it is very clear that Kendall Fuller struggled much of the year, and I would say the Minnesota game was kind of the tipping point, the turning point. I think that was right after the trade deadline. Maybe it was a week after the trade deadline. I can't remember. But I'm sorry. It's hard to kind of ignore that as soon as William Jackson III and that whole black cloud went away, Kendall Fuller woke up and started to play ball. And he was really good last week against Philadelphia, pretty good against Minnesota, but really good against Philadelphia. And then the pick 6 today.
Yep. Week 8 trade deadline. Week 9 was Minnesota. Week 10 Philly, and now we're here week 11. Houston, the Washington Commanders, 6-5. I almost said 10-6 for some reason, but 6-5. JP and NBC Sports Washington has packed up and left the building. So I think it is time for us to wrap up this live episode, Victory Monday episode of Locked On Commanders.
You deserve a good dinner. Go have yourself a big old Houston-sized steak. Just don't bill it to me, pal. Safe flight back from Houston. Great job, as always, by my guy, David Harrison, flying all over the country to cover your Washington Commanders. We'll tell you where in just a sec. Thanks again for making the Locked On Commanders podcast your first listen and watch of the day, guys. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, again, from the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, including Odyssey. Yes. Coming up, and this will serve as our Monday, our Victory Monday edition as well. So we'll have a new episode for you dropping Monday night into Tuesday. Make sure you check out that. Much more debate on quarterback number 1 for the Washington Commanders. If you want to hop in, now's a good time to do so and beat your chest a little bit, guys. 301-615-3577, 301-615-3577 on the voicemail line for David Harrison, who, again, is in Houston, writing and covering the Washington Commanders for SI.com's FanNation and Commander Country. I'm Chris Russell, one half of the Russell and Medhurst Show. You can listen to me and Pete Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern Time, or anytime live on demand on the Odyssey app. If you're out and about, be kind to one another. Thank you for joining us right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.